Good morning, everyone. The title of my talk today is The Heart of Zen. Once there was a philosopher who became disenchanted with his life. He decided to search for the end of the world. So he left his wife and child and went on a search, on a journey. During that journey, he came in contact with many seekers. And just like the days of old in ancient China and Japan, he spent time studying and realized that they didn't have the answer. They didn't know where the end of the world was. So he left and he continued to travel. He went on, and he traveled up through mountains and valleys and across rivers. It took him several lifetimes. One day he arrived at this precipice, and there was this sign, and it said, "This is the end of the world." And when he peered out into the mist, he saw chaos. He freaked, and he turned around and he retreated. What he failed to see was that on the other side of the sign was printed, "This is the beginning." Now, some things have come up for me during the last few days. I started thinking about how can I help to facilitate some of the steps we go through in practice. Traditionally, we have the ox herding pictures. So in a way, what I'm about to say is kind of related to that. We have what I call the pre-path, for want of a better way of putting it. This is where we are on our search. Maybe we're searching for the end of the world. I don't know. But we begin our search, and what usually prompts us is this disenchantment with our life. Things aren't quite working out for us. We have a kind of doubt. And at this point in time, it isn't necessarily the great doubt, but we have a doubt. We doubt we will get a new car. We doubt if we will move into a big, luxurious house. We doubt if we will get the man or woman of our dreams and live in eternal bliss, Eleusinian bliss from the Greeks. I like that. We doubt that. We begin to see that our thoughts, I would venture to say, they are 80% negative. I mean, when we walk down the street and we see someone and we go, "Bitch," we do that. We all do that. We also begin to see that we're making the people's lives around us miserable. We also notice we are angry for no reason, just angry. It has been said that America is a very angry culture, and we all know that the other side of anger is fear. It is that fear that causes that philosopher to retreat back into that life that he became disenchanted with, because his self-importance was wrapped around that life. Many of us would rather suffer the pain of that life than change, because at least we know the uncomfortableness. We know the pain. We know how big it is. We know how much it weighs, and we know how wide it is. So we have this pre-path, and it doesn't necessarily go away when we embrace the path. All the philosopher had to do was take that first step. You go straight ahead. There's a reason Zen is called a warrior path, because it takes courage. But perhaps one of our styles of imprisonment centers around our thinking that we're not worthy and that we lack the courage, the strength, or the tenacity. We think we lack the great faith, the great doubt, and the great determination. Yet we all will acknowledge we live in a relative world. We can't have up without down. We can't have something else if you remove down, but it won't be up. We get involved in relationships. We're attracted to people because we think they possess qualities that we lack, which is not true. We're simply not in touch with what we call the shadow. If we are fearful, we're also fearless. Now, unfortunately, what tends to happen in our culture, if we end up with two people who think they are incomplete, trying to make a whole person, which never works. The other trick that we do is we create a fantasy. When we love someone, we love all the good things and we deny the existence of negative things. Well, can we have the devil without God? Can you have left without right? Can you have good without bad? We set ourselves up for disappointment. Suddenly, the person isn't up to our expectations. Then we have drama. We're looking for security, and truly, we can think we are secure in chaos and in suffering. It is like pinching yourself to see if you are alive or cutting yourself. Self-mutilation is what some people do to have control over themselves. We will do almost anything to solidify the sense of self, this identity. And if you're in a relationship with a lot of drama, you are really solidifying your sense of identity. It is the same thing as neurosis. It is a strategy for solidifying this identity. It's a defense. And what are we defending against? The three and sometimes four marks of Buddhism are impermanence. Everything is impermanent, nothing lasts. Egolessness, no self. Pain, all pervading pain, all kinds of pain. Pain from sickness, pain that stems from old age, and pain because you're not getting what you think you need, or you lose what you think you need. And the fourth mark, in some cases, is nirvana. These four marks point to a fundamental condition, which is emptiness. Nothing is substantial. I told someone today in Dokusan that security has to be found in insecurity. Take a moment and reflect on that. People say Buddhism is such a depressing religion. You guys sit around and you talk about suffering and dying. Well, we don't have any choice but to die. Imagine who would want to live for 6,000 years with the same crappy shit going on in your head over and over. Could you imagine a life like that? It's like one of my former clients when I was a therapist who's still angry with her sister for something she did 40 years ago. I had this old couple, again, when I was doing therapy, in my office arguing with each other. Well, 56 years ago, you did so and so to me. I'll never forgive you. And they're in their 80s. Would you imagine being 6,000 years old doing that? The thing about the path is it's kind of like we bring the same mindset that we use to solve math problems into the practice. So we bring whatever our style of imprisonment is. For instance, if you are a person who admires people that are accomplished, whatever that means in your reality, they are accomplished. You come into the practice and then you look around at some of the senior people and say, boy, I admire them. I wish I could be like them. I wish I could do this. I wish I could do that. And then what are you doing? You are comparing, because if you are one level of significance and they are another level of significance, then you must be insignificant. It's the same thing that we've done or we do outside of the Zendo. In that case, it's someone in college or in a classmate or is a classmate who graduated at the top of his or her class, or someone in corporate America that went up the corporate ladder very quickly. What is it I'm talking about? Being yourself, just being yourself. So here we are on the path. We're being told to be ourselves. Well, being yourself, does that mean that you view someone else as superior to you? And you get caught up in that game. They're okay, I'm not okay. I don't think that that's what it means. I think if my teacher was here and you were to ask her, if she would want anyone else to be like her, she would say no. It's like we're in the ocean, hopping from one wave to another wave, looking for wetness. Is that wave any wetter than the one where we are? How many oceans are there? There is one. How many minds are there? One. There is a point in practice if we stay with it and we remain mindful when we pay attention to the game that we play with ourselves. Gödel, who's a mathematician, established the fact that you can never know the totality of the universe mathematically. Heisenberg, the philosopher, did the same thing. Immanuel Kant, 200 years ago, said the same thing. But we're still bringing that logic and that reasoning and that rational mind to the practice. We are creating ideas about what enlightenment is. We don't see that enlightenment is right here. It's nothing mystical. It's not the old series where we had Huai Chan came from the Kung Fu series. It's not some guy walking on water. It's right here. Where's the Buddha mind? Right here. When you're suffering, you're a Buddha suffering. When you're acting like an asshole, you're a Buddha acting like an asshole. There's only one Buddha mind. I think the irony is that we are all on a quest only to discover there was nothing to quest after. There's nothing to go for. We've already hit it. Maybe enlightenment is just accepting who you are, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We talk about eternity. The way most of us think about eternity is that it goes on and on and on and on. That's not eternity. That is called permanence. I've already told you it's impermanent. It's one of the marks of Buddhism. But that is how we think about eternity. Oh my God, I'm going to live for eternity. And we have a song, well, we used to have a song called, entitled, I Want to Live Forever. Eternity is about depth in the moment, going deep into the moment. No subject, no object. No you, no I, no other. That's eternity. That's enlightenment. Monk is sweeping. He throws a tile, it ricochets, it hits the tree. Enlightenment. We can appreciate Basso's poetry because it touches something, but to experience means to lose the self. That's what he's talking about, those of you that are familiar with Basso's poems. It's not hearing bird chirps because that means there's a subject and an object. It's not hearing a frog splash in a pond. That would be a subject and an object. It's being so intimate that all that exists is flying. All that exists is chirping. Mind and body have fallen away. I used to sit with a koan I made up. I take whatever I'm working on and I turn it into a koan. Lately, I've been sitting with, for a while, who is it that's afraid? Many of us don't recognize our fear. There's an obvious fear you have. You might be a little anxious or uncomfortable, or you're sitting on the Dokusan line and say, oh man, I gotta go in there and see Roshi. But there is that fear. Fear manifests itself in lots of ways, like being angry, as I mentioned earlier, like walking down the street and saying, what are you looking at? That's fear of being, there's a fear of being arrogant. And arrogance is a cover for fear. The point I want to make here is as long as we get stuck in our identity and all that stuff I'm bringing up, it's like we can look at that. And when we look at that, we know that we're not in unity consciousness. We aren't embodying yet the sense of oneness, which is the challenge. It is to make this intellectual notion, I am nothing, therefore I am everything, into a reality. We don't have to be on the cushion. The cushion is a good place to really work on this. However, what's our practice? Our life. We don't have to be on the cushion to become aware of our anger, of our arrogance as we interact with people. We don't have to be on the cushion. It's right here. It's right there. If someone cuts in front of me, or anybody who doesn't hold the door when I'm walking behind them, or doesn't say good morning to me when I say good morning to them, I open the door and they just go in and I say, thank you very much. And then I go, you're welcome. It's amazing how we think we know the relative world, but it's a whole different trip when you see the relative world from an absolute perspective. As Buddha said, we have a topsy-turvy view of the world. What happened to equality is in that example. What happened to being courteous? It is kind of interesting that we don't see the oneness, and not seeing the oneness, we don't see the interconnection of everything. I think, if anything, I'm really pushing for us to remain mindful and to close the gap, to continuously work at closing the gap between that which separates us, which is self-absorption or preoccupation with ourselves. Now, Gempo Roshi's big mind process, I want to reference, is a great tool for closing that gap. But we have to continuously sit. I would also say that yoga and Tai Chi could be great tools for closing the gap. Move from sitting on the cushion to keeping the same state of mind as you move. I think there's an easier transition from the actual movement to being able to do that when you interact with people in an office setting or when you interact with people here. I wish there was a way that we could signal each other, and when we see each other slipping back into that, what I call I-ness, that we would go beep. So the practice is about being open. When we become an ice cube, that's where our anxiety comes from. When we become a solid, we become anxious, uptight, and fearful. But the more we remain open, the freer we are. We all have glimpses, so we'll not work at extending them.